Friends, it's me, Mirab, and welcome back to Starspill USA. Today's story reaches into a part of the Brown family that Kody never imagined would slip out of his control. Because the daughter he once believed would remain quiet, obedient, and aligned with his values, Aurora Brown, has stepped into her own independence. Aurora is officially dating, and for most families that would simply be a milestone. But in the world of purity culture, patriarchal structure, and emotional authority, this is a revolution. When Kody sat down with Aurora's boyfriend, he didn't congratulate them, express happiness, or offer normal parental advice. Instead, he dusted off a performance he rarely uses, the moral leader act, and delivered a lecture straight from the old playbook. When you kiss a girl you're dating, you're actually kissing someone else's future wife. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't protective. It was ownership disguised as virtue. In that one statement, Aurora became not an individual, but an object belonging to a hypothetical future husband. But here's the shift Kody never expected. Aurora no longer subscribes to that belief system. Over the past year, she has quietly and steadily reclaimed her identity. New personal choices, new emotional boundaries, and most significantly, leaving the AUB faith structure entirely. The belief system Kody thought was unbreakable has already crumbled from within, and Aurora walked out of its ruins without asking for permission. And the most painful part for Kody? She didn't argue with him. She didn't fight. She simply stopped letting him define her. Silence is something Kody doesn't know how to control, because his authority always depended on being listened to. And now, the daughter he assumed would reflect his values has become the mirror he never wanted to face, the reflection of his own hypocrisy. Kody preached purity while breaking marriages. He preached commitment while abandoning emotional responsibility. The children see it now. Aurora sees it clearly, and her choice to live on her own terms is not just a personal step. It is the symbolic unraveling of the Brown family power structure. This isn't just a dating story. This is the quiet end of Kody's era of control. But friends, here is where the emotional weight truly sits. Aurora didn't stop loving her family. She simply stopped surrendering herself to their rules. For years, the Brown children were raised inside a belief system where obedience was mistaken for loyalty, where spiritual commitment was twisted into a quiet surrender of identity, and where Kody's approval acted like currency. The children who followed his values were praised. The ones who questioned him were dismissed, or worse, emotionally cut off. We watched it happen with Gabe, with Garrison, with Isabel, with Mykelti, with Hunter, and even with Truly in her own gentle way. But Aurora's shift is different. Because Aurora was always seen as Robin's emotional anchor, the child who held the peace, kept the calm, and absorbed the stress. The one Kody often pointed to as proof of his successful parenting. So her stepping out of the system is not just rebellion, it is the collapse of Kody's favorite narrative. And notice what happens every time Kody's control weakens. He doesn't reflect. He doesn't soften, he tightens his grip. He goes into lectures, power statements, shaming disguised as concern, emotional intimidation masked as fatherly guidance. But this time, no one is reacting. Aurora isn't crying. She isn't defending. She isn't trying to make him feel understood. She is simply living her life. And that is what terrifies Kody most, the realization that love does not return when it is demanded. Affection does not follow authority, and loyalty cannot be forced. Because for the first time in his life, Kody is learning something he has never allowed himself to learn. Children grow up. And once they see the truth, they don't unsee it. And while Kody is scrambling to reassert control, the other women who once built their lives around him are watching this shift with a mix of heartbreak, vindication, and quiet knowing, because they lived this story long before Aurora did. Janelle, steady and grounded, sees Aurora's defiance not as rebellion, but as growth. The kind of growth she once hoped her own daughters would feel safe enough to claim. She remembers the years when she swallowed her voice, when logic was treated as defiance, when emotional needs were dismissed as weakness. Now she looks at Aurora and sees a young woman drawing boundaries she herself never had the chance to draw. And there is pride there, even if it is softened by sadness. Christine, on the other hand, watches with a full heart, because she was the first to truly break free, the first to put her happiness above Kody's authority, the first to say, "I deserve more than this." She knows exactly what Aurora is doing, even if Aurora doesn't yet fully understand it. She is choosing herself. And Christine, now living a life filled with real love and genuine affirmation, understands that the greatest revolution is simply refusing to be small. Meanwhile, Mary, who spent decades clinging to a love that bruised her spirit, sees Aurora's detachment as a kind of cosmic justice, a cycle breaking where hers could not. Mary spent half her life apologizing for wanting affection, wanting connection, wanting to matter. She was conditioned to believe that needing love was selfish. Now she watches Aurora refuse to internalize that same lesson, and it feels like a wound stitching itself closed thread by thread. And somewhere deep inside, Mary knows that if her younger self had been given the support Aurora has found within herself, her entire life might have looked different. And then there is Robin, the one who has spent years insisting that the family's fractures were tragedies she never wanted, even as she quietly benefited from every division. Robin is terrified because her power has always come from unity that was never truly unity. It was compliance disguised as harmony. Kody leaned on her because she never challenged him. She agreed, she soothed, she reassured him that his perspective was the only one that mattered. But now her daughter is challenging him, her daughter, and that threatens the foundation of everything she built. Behind closed doors, there are tearful conversations, whispered fears, attempts to spin Aurora's independence as being influenced or going through a phase, because acknowledging that Aurora sees the world clearly would mean acknowledging that the narrative Robin crafted, the narrative where Kody's leadership was noble and righteous, was built on sand. And Kody? He is sitting in the center of all of this, watching the last pillar of his authority slip away. For years, he believed his role in the family was ordained, certain, unquestionable. But now, with every choice Aurora makes for herself, with every boundary she establishes, with every quiet moment of, "No, I don't accept that," Kody's image of himself cracks. He doesn't know how to love without controlling. He doesn't know how to guide without dictating. He doesn't know how to connect without demanding obedience. And so as Aurora steps forward into the world, he steps backward into the echo of his own ego, realizing far too late that love built on authority is never love at all. It is fear wearing a sentimental mask. And now the mask is slipping. But friends, here is where the story becomes even more layered, because Aurora's shift doesn't just affect Kody, it lands right at the center of Robin's world. For years, Robin built her identity on being the peacemaker, the one who held the family together, the one who carried emotional burden for everyone else. And Aurora was always right beside her, the daughter who helped, supported, soothed, and stabilized her mother's world. In many ways, Aurora didn't just grow up as a daughter, she grew up as Robin's emotional partner, the one who absorbed the stress Kody brought home. So when Aurora began choosing independence, dating on her own terms, expressing her own beliefs, questioning the spiritual structure, it didn't just challenge Kody. It quietly shook Robin too. Because Robin's power in the family never came from volume or dominance. It came from the loyalty of her children. So for her, Aurora's transformation isn't only a daughter growing up, it is the silent breaking of a bond that was built on shared pressure and survival. And here's the difficult truth. Robin is proud of Aurora, but she is afraid of losing her. You can hear it in how carefully she chooses her words. You can see it in how she watches Aurora when Kody speaks, as if she's measuring every breath, every reaction, every shift. Because Robin knows Kody's pattern. The moment a child stops yielding, Kody stops nurturing. He withdraws. He grows cold. He labels them disrespectful. Then he rewrites the story, "They pulled away from me." And Robin has lived through that cycle enough times to fear it. So she is doing what she always does when she's afraid of loss. She tries to hold harmony, even if that harmony is fragile and heavy. But the thing about harmony built on silence is, it cannot survive when one person starts speaking in their own voice. And Aurora is speaking now, not loudly, not dramatically, but simply by being herself. Her independence is not performative. It is gentle, grounded, steady, and that is exactly why it is so powerful. She is not fighting the system. She is simply stepping out of it. And when someone steps out of a belief structure peacefully, they don't just leave. They take the illusion of authority with them. But friends, here is where the story turns quiet and heavy. Because Kody is not a man who handles emotional change with grace. He handles it with authority, or at least the performance of authority. And when authority stops working, he doesn't know who he is anymore. For so long, Kody believed his role in the family was fixed, unquestionable. He was the spiritual guide, the protector, the decision maker, the center of the Brown universe. But when Aurora stopped responding to his moral lessons, when she simply listened, nodded, and continued living her own truth, Kody felt something he is deeply unfamiliar with: power slipping. Not because of rebellion, but because of growth. See, Kody knows how to fight back when someone argues. He knows how to shame, guilt, threaten withdrawal, or make himself the victim. But Aurora didn't fight, she just didn't give him emotional fuel. No tears, no pleading, no trying to win his approval. Just calm self-possession, and that is the one thing that cannot be controlled. So instead, Kody did what he always does when reality doesn't bend to his expectations. He reframed the narrative. To himself, to Robin, to anyone listening, he began saying, "She's just confused. She's influenced by the world. She's distancing herself from values. She needs guidance." Because if he admits the truth, that Aurora is making choices because she is healthy and growing, then he must confront something devastating. His guidance was never stability. It was fear. And the fear has finally run out. This is why his voice tightens when he speaks about her future. This is why he insists on purity and sacrifice while he himself has never given emotional sacrifice to his children. He does not fear that Aurora will be hurt. He fears that Aurora will thrive without him. Because if she thrives without him, he must face the reality that he was never the reason his children were good. They were good in spite of him, because of their mothers, their siblings, and their own resilience. And for a man whose identity was built on being the moral center, that is a loss deeper than divorce, deeper than public criticism, deeper than any broken marriage. It is the loss of the story he tells himself about who he is. But friends, the most revealing part of this entire shift isn't happening in front of cameras. It's happening quietly, in the small private conversations between the Brown siblings. Because the truth is, Aurora isn't the first to step away. She is just the one Kody didn't expect to. And when someone you always believed was fully loyal chooses independence, it sends a message to everyone else. You are allowed to choose yourself. And the siblings have been watching. They have watched Aurora set boundaries without guilt, stop participating in emotional scripts, choose happiness without permission, and do it all without apologizing. This is new. This is powerful. This is freedom demonstrated, not argued. And each sibling recognizes it because they lived under the same unspoken rules. Be agreeable. Don't question the spiritual structure. Don't challenge Dad. Keep the peace at any cost. But peace that requires silence is not peace, and it is self-erasure. And now, slowly, gently, quietly, the Brown siblings are talking to each other more honestly than ever before. Not in dramatic confrontations, not in explosive arguments, but in real, vulnerable ways. I thought it was just me. I used to think I was the problem. I didn't know we were allowed to feel differently. I didn't know we could leave too. Aurora didn't start a rebellion. She started recognition. And that is far more powerful. Because once one person models emotional autonomy, the others realize they were never actually powerless. They were just conditioned to believe they were. And friends, that is what Kody is truly losing. Not control, friends. What's happening now inside the Brown family isn't just personal, it's cultural. Because the belief system that once held this family together, the purity structure, the spiritual hierarchy, the idea that love is earned through obedience, is falling apart from the inside. For decades, purity culture in this family was presented as love, as safety, as moral guidance. But purity culture is not about love. It's about ownership. And the moment the children began to see themselves as individuals instead of extensions of their parents' spiritual identity, the structure lost its power. Because purity culture only works if you feel guilty for having your own desires, you feel afraid of disappointing authority, you believe love must be proven by obedience. But Aurora's transformation, quiet, steady, grounded, has done something purity culture fears the most. She has shown that you can grow, love, thrive, and choose your own path without losing your goodness. And that changes everything. Because purity culture relies on the narrative that choice, danger. But what happens when choice leads to healing? When independence leads to peace? When stepping away from religious pressure leads to emotional stability? The story collapses. Kody cannot preach purity anymore, because the children watched him break every vow he ever asked them to uphold. He preached unity while creating division. He preached loyalty while abandoning emotional responsibility. He preached sacrifice while refusing to sacrifice his own ego. And the children see it now, not in anger but in clarity. This is why the shift feels so final. Not explosive, not dramatic, just truthful. Because systems of control don't fall when someone fights them. They fall when people stop believing in them. And the Brown children? They have stopped believing, not in family, not in love, not in faith, but in the idea that love requires losing yourself. And once a generation realizes they do not have to inherit a wound, the wound ends. This is the quiet revolution. Not loud, not angry, not bitter, just free. But the illusion that he ever had it. So friends, as we step back and look at the Brown family today, something becomes unmistakably clear. This was never just a story about one daughter dating, or one conversation about purity, or one father losing influence. This is the story of a family who was raised to believe that love and obedience were the same thing, now learning that love is something entirely different. Aurora did not rebel. She did not break away in anger. She simply stepped into her own personhood. And that is what makes this moment so profound. Because when someone leaves in silence, without fight, without apology, without permission, it means they have found something deeper than approval. They have found self-trust. And once you trust your own heart, you don't need anyone else to tell you who you are. Kody is now standing in a place he has never had to stand before, a place where authority has no audience. The lectures don't land. The guilt doesn't stick. The power doesn't shape behavior anymore. Because power only works if the other person believes it is real. Aurora doesn't, and neither do the siblings who are quietly following her example, not by fighting the system, but by simply stepping out of it. This is how generational cycles end. Not with explosions, not with dramatic declarations, but with a soft, steady, unwavering, I choose myself. And once one person chooses themselves, the path opens for everyone who comes next. So today, the Brown family stands at a turning point. Not the end of love, not the end of connection, but the end of fear-based belonging and the beginning of something new. Family, chosen freely. Love, given without condition. Identity, defined from within. And that is a much stronger foundation than control ever offered. Friends, this is not the fall of the Brown family. This is the beginning of them finally becoming real. This entire situation with Aurora Brown is not simply about a young woman beginning to date. It represents a quiet but profound shift in the emotional structure of the Brown family. For years, Aurora was seen as the gentle, compliant daughter, the one who supported Robin through every storm and validated Kody's sense of himself as a spiritual leader. But as she has grown, she has chosen to quietly reclaim her identity, her autonomy, and her emotional independence, and she has done so without chaos, argument, or rebellion. She simply began to live her life according to her own beliefs rather than the rules of purity culture and control that Kody has always preached but never personally honored. When Kody tried to reassert his authority through a purity lecture, suggesting that Aurora's worth belonged to a future husband, Aurora did not argue. She simply did not internalize it. And that stillness, that refusal to yield emotionally, is what has made this shift so powerful. Because power only works when the other person believes in it, and Aurora no longer does. Her steady independence has become a beacon for the other Brown siblings, many of whom have carried silent emotional wounds from years of pressure, guilt, and conditional affection. They are now watching Aurora and realizing that love does not have to mean surrendering yourself. That family does not have to mean silence. That faith does not have to mean fear. And that choosing yourself does not mean abandoning others. It means finally seeing your own life as yours. In losing his influence over Aurora, Kody is being forced to face a truth he has spent years avoiding, that his authority was never rooted in love, but in expectation. And expectations cannot survive when the heart awakens. This is not the destruction of the Brown family. It is the first moment that real connection, real honesty, and real emotional freedom have been allowed to take root. Aurora didn't create division. She simply stopped disappearing. And in doing so, she has given everyone else permission to come back to themselves too.